Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation, I would like to talk about the Islamic influence and origins of what we know as the Kabbalah and that system which it inhibits. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this presentation, and this is for free speech and entertainment purposes only. Al-Andalus, under Islamic governance, was not merely a political territory, but a cultural crucible where Mediterranean, North African, and Middle Eastern currents converged. Muslims, Jews, and Christians participated in unprecedented intellectual exchange, creating a unique atmosphere of cross-pollination, especially at that time where the Catholic Church was deeming everything to be of the devil, and how the Islamic presence in Al-Andalus, Spain, was able to bring Europe from darkness into the Renaissance, and also protecting Jewish ideas and foundations as well, just like how the Charter of Medina teaches us to protect Jews and Christians under Muslim rule. Now, the aspect of this narrative is often romanticized, right? But what is undeniable is that Jewish scholars flourished under Islamic Spain. Their mystical innovations, later recognized as Kabbalah, were inseparable from this cultural movement, shaped by Quranic spirituality and Sufi mysticism. Rather than simply tolerating minority communities, Islamic Spain integrated them into its intellectual life. Jewish translators worked side by side with Muslim philosophers to transmit text into Hebrew and Latin, ensuring that Jewish mysticism emerged in constant dialogue with Islam. Any attempt to narrate the history of Kabbalah without recognizing this Islamic matrix is historically dishonest. Kabbalah is not an isolated flowering, but a branch of the wider Islamic philosophical and mystical tree. The Abbasid House of Wisdom in Baghdad gathered Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, translating them into Arabic and transforming them through Islamic categories of thought. This treasury of knowledge traveled westward with scholars, traders, and mystics into North Africa and then into Spain. Without this vast Arabic intellectual reservoir, there would have been no philosophical or mystical framework for Jewish thinkers in Spain to build upon. Kabbalah's foundations were laid in this earlier Islamic translation movement. Thinkers such as Al-Farabi, Avicenna, Ibn Sina, and Averroes provided structured metaphysical systems that Jewish scholars eagerly translated into Hebrew. The very categories of emanation, intellect, and soul in Kabbalah echo these Islamic philosophical precedents. This is not accidental borrowing, but active participation in a shared intellectual tradition that Islam had cultivated for centuries before Jewish mystics adopted it and adapted it. The Abjad system assigned numerical values to Arabic letters, a practice deeply embedded in Quranic exegesis, astrology, and mystical speculation. Sufi masters meditated upon the hidden correspondences between letters, numbers, and cosmic realities. This practice imbued the Arabic alphabet with metaphysical depth, transforming language itself into a sacred code through which divine mysteries were unveiled. This is what you know as the Gematria system. When Jews in Al-Andalus encountered the Abjad system, they adapted it to Hebrew, creating what we know as Gematria today. This allowed them to read the Torah on multiple planes, numeric, symbolic, and cosmological, mirroring Islamic approaches to the Quran. The narrative of Gematria as an independent Jewish innovation collapses under scrutiny. It is more accurate to describe it as an Islamic science reframed in a Jewish idiom. The Sefer Yetzirah's meditations on Hebrew letters reflect Abjad precedents, while the Zohar's use of numerological symbolism mirrors Sufi hermeneutics. Now, both traditions treat language as the fabric of reality, revealing parallel methodologies. Specific examples, such as the numerical equivalents of divine names in Hebrew and Arabic, demonstrate not coincidence but shared intellectual DNA. Sufi cosmology described a chain of emanations from the ineffable divine essence into the multiplicity of creation. Terms like tajalli, divine self-disclosure, articulated a layered universe cascading from unity to multiplicity. This hierarchical structure of reality is directly mirrored in the Kabbalistic schema of the Sephirot, which also maps the descent of divine light into creation. Islamic philosophers spoke of 10 intellects, culminating in the active intellect that interacts with human thought. Kabbalah, with its 10 Sephirot, reproduced a parallel vision of divine emanations, structured in 10 stages. The structural symmetry between these two systems cannot be explained away as coincidence. It is evidence of cultural transmission within Islamic Spain. Ibn Arabi's concept of the perfect human, Al-Insan al-Kamil, described the primordial archetype who reflects all divine names and attributes. Kabbalists later articulated the figure of Adam Kadmon in precisely the same role. This parallel reveals a direct borrowing of metaphysical anthropology, with Kabbalah reframing Sufi metaphysics into a Jewish context. The Kabbalistic notion of Ein Sof, the infinite and unknowable divine, has striking resonances with the Sufi articulation of Al-Haq, the real, which transcends all categories and yet is the ground of all existence. Both traditions insist on the utter transcendence of the divine while simultaneously mapping its emanations into the cosmos. These conceptual overlaps reveal the shared metaphysical grammar of Islam and Kabbalah. Sufi practices revolved around the 99 names of God, Allah, each representing a facet of divine manifestation. Kabbalists similarly structured the Sephirot as attributes or vessels of divine expression. The structural and functional parallels suggest not independent invention, but shared cosmological reflection emerging from the same intellectual environment in Islamic Spain. Bahya ibn Pakuda, a Jewish philosopher in 11th century Zaragoza, wrote Duties of the Heart, a text suffused with Sufi ethical and mystical vocabulary. His integration of Islamic spirituality into Judaism is undeniable. Bahya is a prime example of how Jewish thought in Al-Andalus was not separate from, but deeply immersed in Sufi currents. His work prepared the ground for later Kabbalistic developments. Abraham Abulafia, one of the most radical Kabbalists, developed techniques of meditation on divine names that closely resembled Sufi dhikr practices. His emphasis on ecstatic union echoes Sufi models of annihilation in God. The similarities between Abulafia's techniques and Sufi practices further exposed the porous boundaries between Jewish and Islamic mysticism in medieval Spain. Cordoba, Toledo, and Granada were vibrant centers where Muslims, Jews, and Christians exchanged ideas. These cities housed libraries, academies, and circles of learning that facilitated cross-pollination. Kabbalah was born in this urban context of exchange, making its Islamic genealogy not an abstract theory, but a lived historical reality. European Orientalists of the 19th and 20th centuries, including Gershom Scholem, systematically downplayed the Islamic contributions to Kabbalah, just like all of the other Western initiatic orders. Their frameworks privileged a narrative of Jewish isolation and originality to align with nationalist and Eurocentric agendas. By erasing Islam, they reinforced a hierarchy where European and Jewish thought appeared autonomous, while Islamic influence was silenced. European intellectuals appropriated Islamic ideals indirectly through Jewish Kabbalah and later erased the Islamic origins. This theft parallels colonial exploitation, extraction of knowledge without acknowledgement. What Europe presents as its mystical heritage is in large part Islam's intellectual property, reframed and stripped of its origins. Just like all the other stuff that I covered before, whether it's Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry, Thelema, it all comes back to Islam. The Renaissance appropriation of Kabbalah by Christian thinkers like Pico della Mirandola uprooted it from its Islamic context, transforming it into a tool for Christian theology. The act of colonization made Kabbalah serve Christian supremacy while erasing its true origins. This mirrors colonial strategies of later centuries: extract the knowledge of the other, sanitize it, and repackage it as a European creation. Modern academic institutions, shaped by colonial power, constructed narratives that privileged Europe as the source of universal knowledge. The downplaying of Islam's role in Kabbalah is part of this machinery of myth-making. To dismantle this machinery requires decolonial critique that exposes how intellectual history has been rewritten to serve Western superiority, right? Stuff that makes them look good and feel good. The Western ego clings to myths of autonomy, but history reveals dependency. Kabbalah, often paraded as a jewel of Jewish or Christian mysticism, is in fact the child of Islam. Just like Freemasonry, OTO, Thelema, Rosicrucianism, and all of the stuff in general that I've covered. To acknowledge this truth is to dismantle centuries of Eurocentric hubris. This is not a minor footnote, but a paradigm shift. The very foundations of Western esotericism are indebted to Islam, and the refusal to admit this is an act of willful ignorance and racism, even the ones that pretend to be all enlightened and mystical. Recentering Islam in the genealogy of Kabbalah challenges modern cultural biases that erase Muslim contributions from global intellectual history. It compels us to confront how colonialism shaped not only politics, but also the stories we tell about knowledge. By acknowledging Islam's role, we restore justice to intellectual history and open new avenues for dialogue between faiths and the present. It is both an academic correction and a spiritual necessity. The myth of Western mystical autonomy collapses before Islam's undeniable centrality. Here are academic references that I recommend you check out at your leisure, which extensively cover this topic as well. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And all my work is under the copyright laws of fair use, nonprofit, education, entertainment, information purposes, free speech, and this is the purpose of my videos and channel. Thank you. All rights reserved.